What if the next world war doesn't start with a missile, but with a miscalculation? Right now, the United States and Iran are locked in a standoff so dangerous that former Pentagon officials are quietly using a word they haven't used in decades: miscalculation. And the last time that word was whispered in classified briefings, thousands of soldiers never came home. Here is what the mainstream media is not connecting for you. This is not just a military story. This is a money story, a power story, a story about who controls the flow of oil, weapons, and wealth across the most volatile region on Earth, and what happens to your economy, your fuel prices, and your retirement account when that system breaks. Let's go back to where this really begins. Iran has been under United States sanctions for over 4 decades. But here is the part that gets buried. Iran has not been economically isolated, not even close. China has been quietly absorbing Iranian oil at deeply discounted prices, sometimes paying as little as $10 below the global market rate. That is not charity. That is a strategic partnership built on one shared goal: reducing American financial dominance. While Washington has been applying pressure, Beijing has been building pipelines, ports, and payment systems that bypass the US dollar entirely. Now layer in what is happening militarily. Iran's proxy network, Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Houthis in Yemen, Shia militias in Iraq and Syria. These are not independent actors. They are forward deployed capabilities. Think of them as Iran's version of aircraft carrier groups, except instead of ships, they use ideology, money, and weapons funneled through routes that intelligence agencies spend billions trying to track. The Houthis alone have disrupted over $20 billion in global shipping by targeting vessels in the Red Sea. That is not a small insurgency. That is economic warfare at a strategic scale. Now here is where the United States calculus gets complicated. Every time Washington considers a direct military strike on Iran, it has to weigh what comes after. Iran has the capability to close the Strait of Hormuz, a narrow waterway that carries roughly 20% of the world's oil supply. If that strait closes, even for 72 hours, oil prices do not spike 10 or 15%. They can surge past $150 per barrel. That sends inflation surging in the United States, Europe, and across every emerging market that runs on cheap energy. The economic blast radius of a military confrontation with Iran is not just felt in Tehran, it is felt in Texas, in London, in Tokyo. And the United States knows this, which is why the strategy has not been full-scale war. It has been what analysts call maximum pressure with controlled escalation. Targeted strikes, cyber operations, sanctions tightening, and proxy counter-operations. The killing of General Qasem Soleimani in January 2020 was the most visible example of this doctrine. It sent a message. But Iran's response, ballistic missiles fired at U.S. bases in Iraq, sent a message right back. Neither side wanted full war, but both sides wanted the other to blink first. Fast forward to today, and the tension has never been closer to the edge. Iran's nuclear program is now at a level of advancement that even the most conservative intelligence estimates say is within weeks of weapons-grade enrichment capacity, not years. This has shifted the strategic calculus dramatically. Israel, which has carried out multiple covert strikes on Iranian nuclear facilities, is under enormous pressure to act before that window closes. And if Israel strikes, the United States is almost certainly drawn in. That is the tripwire scenario that keeps generals and Treasury officials awake at 3 in the morning. Here is the financial dimension that almost nobody is reporting clearly. Defense stocks, Raytheon, Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, have seen significant capital inflows every time the rhetoric escalates. This is not coincidence. Institutional investors read geopolitical signals. When carrier groups move into the Persian Gulf, smart money moves into defense. When sanctions packages are announced, oil futures traders position themselves for volatility. There is an entire financial ecosystem that profits from the edge of conflict, not from peace. And understanding that system tells you more about why these situations rarely fully resolve than any political speech ever will. Saudi Arabia is another piece of the puzzle most analysts underweight. In 2023, China brokered a diplomatic normalization between Saudi Arabia and Iran, a deal that would have been unthinkable 5 years earlier. Why did Riyadh move toward Tehran? Because Gulf states are increasingly uncertain about long-term American security commitments. They watch the U.S. withdraw from Afghanistan, they watch the hesitation in Ukraine, and they are hedging. Saudi Arabia is diversifying, economically through Vision 2030, diplomatically through deals with both East and West, and militarily through massive weapons acquisitions from multiple suppliers. When your most important regional ally starts hedging, that changes your strategic position fundamentally. Russia is the third corner of this triangle. Moscow and Tehran have moved from an awkward relationship to something that looks increasingly like a strategic alignment. Iranian drones have been used on Ukrainian battlefields. In exchange, Russia provides Iran with air defense systems, diplomatic cover at the UN Security Council, and economic access that helps Tehran survive Western pressure. This is not an alliance of values. It is an alliance of necessity, built around a shared interest in weakening American-led global order, and it is working better than Washington publicly acknowledges. So where does this go? There are three scenarios that serious analysts are modeling right now. The first is managed escalation. The current state of low-grade conflict continues, with occasional strikes, proxy clashes, and financial pressure, but no direct war between the US and Iran. This has been the dominant pattern for 4 decades and could continue. The second scenario is a miscalculation cascade. One strike goes wrong, one commander makes a decision without full authorization, and events spiral faster than diplomats can contain. History is full of wars that nobody planned but nobody stopped. The assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand did not cause World War I. The failure to stop the cascade afterward did. The third scenario, and this is the one that Wall Street's quietest risk models are pricing, is a coordinated regional war that draws in Israel, Iran, Hezbollah, Gulf states, and by extension, American forces, Russian diplomatic interference, and Chinese economic positioning. That scenario does not have a clean exit, and its economic consequences would make the 2008 financial crisis look like a market correction. Here is what you need to watch as the leading indicators. First, oil futures volatility, specifically the options market, where sophisticated money hedges against tail risk. When those premiums spike, someone with access to real intelligence is buying insurance. Second, watch the movement of U.S. carrier groups. When two carriers are in the same theater, that is a show of force. When a third moves into position, that is preparation. Third, watch the currency markets, specifically the Iranian rial and the Israeli shekel. Currency traders price in conflict risk before missiles fly. Fourth, watch the tone of IAEA reports on Iranian nuclear activity. When the language shifts from concern to alarm, the clock is moving. If you have found this analysis valuable, and I believe you have because you are still here, then understand that this channel exists to give you the strategic intelligence that cable news and financial media either cannot or will not provide. The intersection of war and money is where the real decisions are made, and the people who understand that intersection are never caught off guard. Subscribe to WarFinex right now if you want to stay ahead of the next escalation before it hits your portfolio, your fuel costs, and your geopolitical reality. Hit the bell. Share this with someone who thinks this is just a distant conflict. Because as you now know, no conflict in the 21st century is distant anymore. The next video is already waiting for you, and it goes even deeper into where the hidden money flows when war becomes inevitable.